Hey, everybody. This is Jen, and I'm here with Barb Matias Haynes. And she is a life and business coach and a personal trainer and a yoga and meditation teacher, um, and just for fun, a ski instructor. Hey, Barb, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Jen? Good to see
I'm
you.
doing well. It's fun. I'm glad we're finally getting to do this. So tell us
I
a little
know.
bit.
Yeah, I love.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about you. Like, what do you do and who are you and all the stuff?
So I am a coach, and I coach all kinds of things, like you said. I go from business coaching to personal training, helping people with their overall wellness. I've done grief coaching, also helped people sort of, follow their passions in business. I've just been teaching and coaching pretty much my whole life. And it wasn't until recently that I was like, you know what? I probably should get some formality around this thing that I've been doing for years. Like when I was in my business world, like 15 plus years of marketing business, I was that boss where not only did, I help people solve the problems at work, they would also come to me with their personal problems,
Yeah.
boyfriends, girlfriends, loss of parents, all those things. For whatever reason, my staff would always come to me for those things. And then as I evolved to the wellness area, again, you end up with very deep personal relationships with the people that you teach, especially if it's a one-on-one training of some sort. And so same thing, folks started coming to me with like, and wanting to share with me sort of deeper things beyond yoga, meditation, or exercise. And
Yeah.
so I ended up thinking, you know what, I think I want to put some formality around all this experience I have, and just which led me to becoming a Journey certified coach. And so
Very
here I
cool.
am.
Nice.
Those things.
Well, and then you also teach, right? Because you teach two classes at the Tat Lab, right?
Yes, I teach. It's actually I'll call it two and a half. So I teach a group called 360 Degrees of Wellness. We also do yoga nidra, and it started off a little bit differently. So there was just so many topics that we want to talk about. How to tune into your superpower. How to find more abundance in your life. We did meditation. At one point it was like twice a week for half an hour, and so it evolved to this place where we sort of put everything under one umbrella. So understanding sort of the full picture, the 360 degrees of wellness that you can do. And then what we've now evolved to is like we come to a topic, like recently we talked about resilience. And at the end of that topic, we seal in those learnings with meditation. And the meditation that I do most of the time is Yoga Nidra. And Yoga Nidra is a deep, detailed, guided meditation. And I use a singing bowl, and it really just gets you into this state of sort of a waking state of rest. And when you're in that waking state of rest, your brain can really just absorb not only whatever intention or mantra you start with at the beginning, but you end up just having total control of how to relax every part of your body. So it's fascinating stuff. Lots of science behind why it's so effective. It's used for folks with PTSD. It's just really, really fascinating. It's fascinating practice. And so if you haven't tried it, you definitely should try that class. So I teach that. The other class that I teach is called Entrepreneur and Career Development Group. And so that's where we sort of use all the learnings that we've got from other parts of the lab about relationships and ourselves, et cetera. And we sort of see ourselves in the dimension of our businesses and our careers. And as you know, everyone is a relationship, right? So you have your family relationships, your intimate relationships with your partner, and then you have your work relationships. So there's this theme that comes, in terms of like who you are at work versus who you are at home. And we get to sort of identify those strengths and weaknesses and then use that to further whatever our career, business passions or endeavors are. And it's been really, really great because thematically you could be in a class about attachment with one of our therapists, and then you can use those learnings and start to figure out, okay, well, am I really attached to this job? Am I really attached to my boss? Am I attached to the outcome? it's really beautiful the way it's been working, because thematically, all those other learnings really apply to your career and your business.
Yeah, no, that makes
Um,
perfect sense.
yes. And then I'll call it the 2.5 class is really just yoga. So I think you and I had seen this, but at one point, some of the members had said, "Hey, can we do yoga?" And there's a few of us who are actually yoga instructors, and I just sort of said, "Hey, why don't I do some yoga?" Because I'm actively a yoga instructor as well. And so anywhere between 2 to 3 times a month, I teach a 50-minute yoga class. And again, thematically, we have our intentions are around abundance, about anti-stress, about the power of movement to change your life. So that is coming up. So you'll see me. 360 is every week, but then we toggle between the entrepreneur and the yoga like every 2 to 3 weeks. So those are the classes I teach.
I love it. It sounds really like well-rounded and expansive, and like it covers a lot of, I mean, let's face it, humans are super multidimensional, and we're not just any one thing. And it sounds like you do a really like nice job covering all of it. I like that.
Well, I think you and I just talked about this, but I'm 51, and so there's so many different life stages I've been through. From my college years to my early career years to my married years and now to my single years. And so like each year has given me like this different dimension. And so what I'm doing through the lab, which I'm so blessed and fortunate to be able to be in this position, but I'm sharing the tools that helped me with every stage, right? Those tools were, how to network to try to get a new job, and then how to move through grief and loss with meditation and yoga, in addition to normal tools like therapy, etc. And so I've now this opportunity to sort of share all those tools that I've learned over the years that have helped me, and to see if they help others. And so you and I both have been through stages and both help people with transitions. And I think 20 years ago, I don't know that I could have done this. I think for me, having the experience to be able to then relay what worked or didn't work for me, I just feel I'm more effective in it now than I would even 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. That's awesome. Okay, so what's your favorite part of teaching in the lab?
Oh my gosh. I have to say it's the members. Oh my gosh. Like the members in the chat lab are, they inspire me to be a better teacher. Because their interactions on a regular basis are just so deep. And everyone, even if it's your first time, there's this sense of support for any vulnerability that may happen. There's a sense of loyalty. There's a sense of community. I really just appreciate the members and this community. And, even though I'm the one teaching, I've learned so much from each interaction, each session that I lead. And like I said, it just helps me to bring better content the next time, and then find ways to just be, to be more effective and continue this, unique interaction that we have in the lab.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, so if you had like a message that you could get out to all of the people you coach and teach, and like what would your like your bumper sticker message be? Like what do you wish they knew about themselves?
This is more top of mind, but one message, and this is just more current, especially with this pandemic, is just know that you are more resilient than you believe. Right? I mean, honestly, like at the beginning of this pandemic, I think a lot of us were, in a place with probably a lot of stress and anxiety about what was going on. But here we are 7-8 months later, and we're all okay. I mean, are we living our best lives and traveling and all this? Maybe not. But we have shown a tremendous amount of resilience, right? This ability to adapt and change and accept our current situation. And in some cases, for some of us, to still really thrive. I've seen cases of people that are like thriving in this environment, having recognized maybe where some of the parts of them needed improvement, noting them, and then taking off. And I love seeing that. And everybody's on a continuum, right? So some people started, were with us at the very beginning, but others are just started, so they may not see that. But yeah, I mean, we are so much more resilient than we believe every time. And I would highly recommend people to write that and see that first thing in the morning.
Right.
Because especially when you're days, just know that the fact that you're alive and breathing and you're walking and today you're healthy, that's resilience right there.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. I feel like, in the grand schemes of 2020 and whatever, like I've had, compared to what's gone on the planet, like I feel like I've had like a fairly easy year. And not that I still think my butt kicked, but like in the realms of like all of the possibilities, right? And but I was writing down the list of like just all of the things that had happened this year, like the not global events, but like in my life personally, like all of the major changes. And it was that moment of like looking back and being like, oh shit, it's been a year. But I do think it's that thing that like, no, we are naturally resilient. We are so much stronger than we think. We are smarter than we think. We are, it's like, and I think it, because we're so good at just continuing on, we lose sight of it sometimes. So I love that. Yeah.
And a simple example that I came up with, like you cut your finger, it bleeds, but then the blood coagulates and ultimately it heals. And if you can remind yourself that that's like the most simple example of your body's resilience, then you're okay, right? Like there's people that don't and could bleed out from a paper cut. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but for the most part, if we are alive, we are resilient and have lived through a lot, emotionally and physically. So anyway, next time you.
No, I think that's beautiful. I love that. That would be a good bumper sticker. All right.
Yes.
So if you had to like list off your top 3 favorite, movies or books or TV shows or whatever, like whatever your media of choice is, what would your top 3 favorites be? And why?
Favorite book is and I have this, it almost will sound like a morbid obsession, but and I'm staring at it right now, but and I have a lot of favorite books, but I'll point out one of them. So one of my favorite books is When Breath Becomes Air. Have you heard of this book?
No, I think you were telling me about it. So I mean, yes, but I think from you.
Yeah. So it's a story, it's a real story of a neuroscientist, or a neurologist who had been treating a ton of patients with brain cancer, and then he ends up getting brain cancer himself. And the book, I don't know, I think it's a combination of him being an amazing writer, and also sort of him going through this, to some degree, this like existential moment in his life, which is basically the end of his life. And it was just such a beautiful, moving book that helps you. Again, it's kind of like, a lot of books about death and dying, that helps where you follow him on this path where he goes back and remembers all of the great things in his life as he is sort of living his final moments. And it's not, and so his philosophies behind it are just so beautiful, but then the wording, the way he words it, it's almost like you're just sitting there listening to his story. And it's one of those books that you read and you have these moments when like it really tugs at your heart. And at the end, of course, at the end he's dying and he can't actually write it anymore. And so you're crying at the end because you're like, you're sad that you're losing this person that it brought you into his life so closely. But it's a really, really beautiful book. And I know a lot of people were scared of it because it's about a man dying and it's his last words. But I highly recommend it, When Breath Becomes Air.
Nice.
I think it's on an audio as well, but just a really, really beautiful book to help you have perspective on death and dying from somebody who passed away. That's one of the many books that I like. The second, I'll just talk about a movie. It's the movie called Lion, Lion. I think we might have talked about this as well. But it's Dev Patel, the guy from Slumdog Millionaire.
Yes.
Yeah. So the movie's called Lion, and just this amazing movie. And it basically follows this man who is he was adopted by an Australian couple, but he was basically he grew up in Bangladesh and just got lost, got separated from his family, and was put into an orphanage. Couldn't get back to his family, and just follows the whole story. And it's just so beautifully. It was a beautiful book, and it was an amazing movie. And again, another one where I was crying all the way through. Apparently, I like these things that make me cry.
Well, I think the ones that like, you know, like they get in and they like rumble around in your psyche and your feelings and your heart space. And yeah, and I think there's something magical about those ones that speak to us that loudly, you know?
Absolutely. No, and I think that that movie definitely just, you know, I think every time I watch it, I think it still pulls at my heartstrings a bit. And then the last book, let me think about it because I'm staring at it again. There's too many books that I love. I'll throw this one up because it's just something that not as emotional, but something that has really been sort of a guidebook for me, is the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And that one has very special meaning to me. So my dad, when he got sick, which is all the way back in 2000, my dad got sick. And it was really tough because it was the first time ever in my life. I think I was like, I don't know, 31 or something, and still fairly young for my dad get really sick. And there was a lot of care that we had to do for him because he was getting debilitated. He had like multiple bleeding strokes through his brain and then was debilitated. And so I distinctly remember this moment. I was in the Muni Metro in San Francisco. I was in my Banana Republic suit with my briefcase. I was getting off of work, and another coworker. And did you watch what is it? Homeland? And you remember Brody from the first episode? This man looked like Brody. Brody, because I don't know his name anymore. But it was a coworker of mine, redhead, looks like Brody from Homeland. And, you know, very, you know, buttoned up in a suit, also with this briefcase. We both worked for Schwab at the time. And I told him what was going on. And, you know, it's San Francisco, so everybody, you know, thinks differently there. And he had recommended the book to me. He's like, you should read the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. It's like, I'm dealing with my mother and you know, her, I don't know if it was her death or if it was her, she was very ill. And he'd recommend it to me. And I literally went to one of like a bookstore because Amazon wasn't prevalent there. And I grabbed the book and I loved reading it because, you know, most of us grow up with a Western understanding of death and dying, right? And Western understanding of death and dying is all about the loss and a lot of mourning. And you can get, it can be such a negative experience. And I was really trying
to either fear or grief. Those are the only two things that we really even acknowledge exist in death and dying. You know?
Especially in Western societies, right? It's like, what am I going to do without this person? You know, all the attachment, everything, you know, with loss. And so reading the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, it was so interesting because it helped me see sort of the Tibetan way of understanding death and dying. And I remember this one piece of the book that talked about breathing in general. And the point was, you know, between every inhale and every exhale, there's a moment that we're not breathing. And if we kind of get in touch with that one moment, that's that space where sort of death is. I know it's a weird concept, but it helped me understand, like just have this whole different perspective, you know, that space.
I love that.
Yeah. And then it went on to talk about, again, like how, not just in Tibetan cultures, but in other cultures, you know, when people, it's more like they're moving to the next life. And, you know, a lot of, there's some Indian cultures where like they herald that step to the next life. And it's a big, and then, you know, also with the Tibetan book, it's more like we're trapped in our bodies in human existence. And when we pass, we're free. And so, and at the time it was really difficult for me to really grasp those concepts, but I knew the writing was on the wall that my dad wasn't going to be around for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I grew up Roman Catholic, so I prayed all the rosaries and went to church and did everything I could, but I was still feeling so uneasy about what was happening in front of me. So, like any San Franciscan does, you look to other answers. You look outside of your norm, and so it's kind of a tough book. I mean, reading through the whole thing is, you have to make sure that you're alert to get it all. But it became a guidebook for me. It became a way for any grief and loss to sort of reference and say, okay, what was that one passage I remember that helped me think differently about something?
I love
So that's
those
why
books.
yeah. Yes. So those are the three that I can think of right now. I'm sure there's more.
Those are some good suggestions, woman. I like it. All right.
Other great books.
Off topic. What do you
Yes.
do in your life to stay sane and grounded? Like in terms of like what wellness modalities or healing things or meditations, like what do you do on a regular basis that helps you, thrive?
So for the most part, it's meditation and movement. I mean, I truly believe in the healing power of movement. But I also found at one point that movement wasn't enough, and so I needed to move. I moved into more of a formal, or at least a regular practice of meditation. So every day, ideally before I look at anything, I meditate from anywhere between 3 minutes to 10 minutes every morning, and that just sets my brain, because I'm a heavy ruminator, and so I'll wake up and be like, okay, you gotta call the tax guy, we gotta call the attorney, we gotta like get things scheduled. Oh shoot, you forgot to schedule that Zoom for that next coaching thing you're doing. So like I'm like, stop. So before I allow my brain to spin out of control when I wake up, I reach over, I grab my headspace, I press play, and good old Andy Puddicombe leads me in a meditation every morning. And
no, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's been really good. And I especially this year, I've done it consistently every single morning, and it helps. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of that is just movement. Every day, whether it's a short 20-minute workout, a walk outside, dancing by myself in the living room, yoga, whatever, I have to move. I think that comes from very early in my life. I think I was always constantly in motion as a kid. And then also having been a dancer for so many years of my life, I mean, that was my lifeblood, like, this movement. And so for me, it's always movement that, gets me to this place of contentment and this feeling of wellness. So those two things, meditation and movement.
I like it. Very cool. All right. Any other things that you'd like to put out there to everyone before we sign off?
Well, I think it's kind of along the themes of what you and I have been talking about a little bit. It's end of the year. It's like, ooh, it went by so fast. And I think, it's end of the year, but it's also the beginning of the year. And I think this is such a great time. And you even mentioned it, like, to reflect back on everything that's happened to us this year, and reflect back on it in this point of, like, again, like, noting your resilience, noticing where you've come from the beginning of this year to the end of this year. And it's kind of like counting your blessings. And we could focus on all the crap that happened to us, or we could look at it as, wow, I got this many clients. I started being a part of the lab, and I say that from, not just my perspective, but anybody's perspective. For the most part, I've been healthy this whole time. I started new habits. And I think for all of us, whoever watches this video, end of the year really gets us to that time to be reflective, and, understand all the good that's happened in our life. And, as opposed to, and you know, I'm sure a lot of people are doing this, like, oh, I'm so done with 2020. It's like,
Mhm.
I'm done with 2020, but I'm not going to forget the lessons of 2020
Right.
either. I
It
want
was
to
a
make
year of
sure.
wisdom. So
Yes.
much wisdom in this year. Like, yeah, to forget all of that would be such a shame.
Yeah, and it's also a year of introspection, right?
Yeah.
So we've been forced to sit with ourselves way longer than we wanted
Right.
to. We're exhausted by time alone. Whereas before you're like, oh, I can't talk to another person. Now you're like, oh my God, I can't sit with myself anymore. But but that in of itself is growth, right? The fact that we survived being by ourselves for so long,
Yeah.
much more than we have in a very long time.
Mhm.
We've survived not having as much interaction, but then we all also became so innovative, right?
Yeah.
We have Zoom, other people using Microsoft Teams. We're doing distance like things in cars. I mean,
Mhm.
we're finding a way. And again, you know, it's that theme of resilience. If we look at back at what happened in 2020, and so
Mhm.
if we look back at 2020 and then we sort of turn that corner to get to where we are with 2021, I mean, in my mind, yes, we're still in a pandemic. Yes, the vaccine's not here, but my gosh, looking back at 2020, as I look into 2021, it was just like a sea of opportunity, right? It's a
Yeah.
sea of opportunity to take those learnings from 2021 and actually use them to further, to 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 continue on this path of being our best selves, right? And yes, this is the coach in me talking, but it's right. It's
Mhm.
true. If we can pause and really note all of our learnings, and we can use those learnings to continue to be our own greatness, and then just keep on that path. And you know, and I hope, you know, in the future that I can help people see that, whether it's in the lab or in individual coaching. Like I always see so much potential in others, and I think you know, it's places like the lab where we are able to lift each other up in a
Mhm.
way that we hadn't before. We didn't have the lab or anything like this before, and now we
No.
have it. And now it's become this amazing tool to get us through, not just through, but thriving through 2021.
Right. Well, and I mean, and I don't know about you, but it's also um because of all of the places that we were handcuffed, you know, metaphorically throughout this last year, there's been so many explosions, and like you were talking about, so much innovation, and also so many different ways that we saw things that worked better than we would have even thought. You know, so many places where it hadn't, I think, occurred to us individually, collectively, in groups, whatever, to do things different ways. And now, you know, and the lab is, I think, a perfect example of that. Of, you know, it is the best parts of gathering in groups and talking about really sometimes very big, heavy things and sometimes very lighthearted things, but without the constraints of distance or time zones or you know, any of that. And I think that is just a perfect example of what this year has enabled us to create.
Yeah, I know. And you know, as you say that, you know, the other thing that it's shown us is that we're not alone,
Mm-mm.
right? You're not
Yeah.
alone. And both like, we'll call it like physically, virtually, we're not
Mhm.
alone. But then our stories are all the same,
Yeah.
right? Like when you come to these places and you allow yourself to be vulnerable, then you realize that your story is, you don't feel so alone in your story because 10 other people have your same story and they're working through different parts of it. So
Yeah.
it's, we're inspired through innovation, which
I
is
love that.
like part of.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. Well, Barb, thank you very much. I appreciate you deeply. And
I appreciate you, my friend.
thank you. We will be talking more soon.
Sounds
Have a
good.
wonderful night.